Hello, friend. My name is Rachel Eslick, and I'm the owner of Reach Fitness. And I am here to talk to you all about kettlebells. I want to give you the whole scoop pretty quickly if I can. I could talk about kettlebells all day long. I would love to do that, but I'm going to try to keep this tight so that we can cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So, the reason you're here is to learn about kettlebells. And so hopefully you're already kind of leaning in the direction of training with kettlebells. And kettlebells are a fantastic tool for training because you can do a lot with a kettlebell. So let me show you a kettlebell real fast. This is a kettlebell. What's unique about a kettlebell is the shape of it, how there's a round ball with a handle on top of it. It's different from the other tools in the gym, mainly dumbbells and barbells. This is different, and there's a different strategy to using it and a different technique. So, kettlebell training really is for everyone. It's for beginners, it's for intermediate athletes, it's for advanced training. You can do a lot with a kettlebell, including build strength, work on your cardiovascular fitness. It's great for mobility training, getting more flexible, getting more limber. You can do a full strength training workout with kettlebells. You could do a full cardio workout with kettlebells. You could do a full mobility workout with kettlebells. But most of the time, what we're doing is incorporating all of the above into a balanced workout. I work with clients that are in their 70s that use kettlebells. I have worked with clients that are teenagers using kettlebells. It really is a tool that's approachable for beginners. But as you get stronger and as you get better at doing the movements, you can move up in weight, which is thrilling and exciting for people. Oh, I used to be able to do an overhead press with 18 pounds, and now I can do 35 pounds and just translate that over a bunch of different exercises. And it's a really great feeling. So, great for beginners, great for all the way up to advanced athletes. And for people who want to train without spending a ton of money, kettlebells are a really great tool for that because they don't cost $1 million like buying expensive machines or cardio equipment. You don't have to buy a Peloton, etc., or treadmill. You could just use a kettlebell for your cardio training, and they're very small and portable. So instead of building out a whole entire gym, if you want to, you totally can. But if you don't want to, if you just have a set of kettlebells, maybe starting with three kettlebells, and then over time you have five or seven or eight or something like that, it can still fit really nicely in the corner of your space. And then you pull out the kettlebells that you need for your workout. You do not need a lot of room. You do not need a lot of money, and you can take your kettlebells with you. So if you're going on a road trip or you're going on a vacation and you want to pack a couple kettlebells in your car, you can absolutely do that and work out wherever you are. And actually, I have a program called Reach Fitness Anywhere where some people are at home, some people are on vacation. It really doesn't matter as long as you have a few kettlebells. You can do all the workouts, and it's a great program. Okay, so I want to go through a lot of things today in terms of like how to do specific exercises because I want you to get a kettlebell. I want you to start playing with a kettlebell and starting to get really consistent with moving well. And as you get more consistent and as you feel good about what you're doing, you're going to make a good amount of progress. But first, if you don't have a kettlebell, um, I have a few criteria that I think are really important. First, cast iron kettlebell. We don't want to be buying plastic kettlebells filled with sand or rubber kettlebells or anything like that. It needs to be made from cast iron. The handle needs to be attached to it. So hopefully it's all built in one cast iron model. Um, Powder coated is really great for just being able to hold on to it. We don't want like a super shiny, slippery metal. And what else? You don't want to pay $1 million for your kettlebell. So I have a whole guide that gives links and more information about starter kettlebells, kind of what to start with, for most people, but really 1 to 2 kettlebells is a great place to start. I started with a 25-pound kettlebell back in the day that I bought from Dick's Sporting Goods. I did a lot with that kettlebell, and now I have almost more than I can count. But it starts with a light kettlebell that you can easily take overhead, a heavier kettlebell that you can do things like deadlifts, carries, maybe even kettlebell swings. And I would love a pair. So your lighter kettlebell that you have and you could take overhead, maybe you have two of those. So say it's 15 pounds, two 15-pound kettlebells, and then maybe you also have a 25 or 35, something heavier that you can squat, do deadlifts, do carries with. Speaking of carries, one of the first things that I want people to know about is how to hold the kettlebell. And I purposely put a scrunchie on my wrist because if you're wearing a watch, I wanted to remind myself, if you're wearing a watch, like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or some sort of like tracker on your wrist, you probably need to, at the very least, turn it around so the face of the watch isn't on the outside of your wrist, or even better, just take it off because as we hold the kettlebell, it's going to agitate our wrist if there's something on our wrist, even like a bracelet. So take that stuff off for now, at least. And I think you'll thank me if you don't break the face of your Apple Watch. Okay, so how to hold a kettlebell. It's different from the other tools in the gym. A dumbbell, we just pick it up. A barbell, there's a lot of technique on how to properly use a barbell. With a kettlebell, it's somewhere in between. You can be a novice and be just fine picking up and using a kettlebell, but a little bit of training is going to go a long way so that you can do things properly and progress your weight and just get better and move forward with confidence. So, first thing, how do we hold this kettlebell? So there's a two-handed rack position. So holding the kettlebell at your chest. Rack position is just an intermediate position. It's not above your head and it's not on the ground and it's not down here by your leg. So two-hand rack position is right here. We're holding the handle of the kettlebell. Some people would call this the kettlebell horns. So we're holding the horns. Our elbows are down. The kettlebell is tight to my chest. It's not out here. I'm not resting it on my body like this. Elbows are down, abs are engaged, holding that kettlebell by the horns right underneath your chin, right at the front of your chest. So this is two-hand rack position. If we're holding the kettlebell like this, we should also hold tension in our glutes, our quads, and our core. This is two-hand rack position. The other rack position would be single arm rack position. If you had two kettlebells, you could do double kettlebell rack position. But I'm just going to show you the one today. This is rack position. I'm on my right side and I just have the one kettlebell. So the biggest thing to notice with this is the position of my wrist. I have a straight wrist. I do not have a bent backwards wrist. I know a lot of people, when they first hold on to a kettlebell, it's like, oh, but there's a lot of pressure on my wrist or it hurts my wrist. This is something that's really important. And although there might be pressure or a little bit of discomfort, which you can definitely address, you do not want to hold the kettlebell with a bent wrist because that's putting you at a less strong standpoint for then doing whatever it is you're doing from this rack position. So we want to always keep a straight wrist. Your thumb is towards your body, your elbows pointed down, and your upper arm is hugging in to your body nice and tight. If I had someone with me right now, we would tug on the kettlebell and try to pull the kettlebell away from each other. And the whole point of that is so that you, as the owner of this kettlebell, is hugging it tight to your body. You have tension with your bicep and your lat. You're squeezing that kettlebell towards you so that you're owning it. It's not going to fall off the front of you. So I would like for you to play around with rack position on each side. So play with it on the right, get to it on the left. You can definitely hold the kettlebell where it feels the most comfortable for your unique body. So I'm holding it right in the middle of the handle, but if you wanted to play around with holding it more up towards the top corner, you could try that. More towards the bottom corner, you could try that. Whatever feels good to you. We all have like wrist bones and different things going on too. Just make sure, like I said before, and I will continue saying ad nauseum, nice straight wrist. Do not be holding it like this. If you start with a straight wrist here, chances are over time, you're going to start bending it backwards. I would rather see you kind of over rotate this way. And then over the course of 30 seconds or so, you'll probably adjust to that straight wrist, but not bent back. Okay, so think about how would you punch someone? Would you punch someone like this? No, you would never do that. So do not hold your kettlebell, which is supposed to be like an extension of your arm as you go overhead with this thing, or as you do a lunge or a squat. You can do a lot of things from rack position, and you want to have a strong, straight wrist in rack position. This is only a 22-pound kettlebell, but I'm so tired of holding it right now. I'm going to grab a lighter one so I can keep demonstrating. A lot of things that I see with rack position are people are out here, they have it on their shoulder like this. Maybe they're crossing over their body. So one more time, thumb towards your body, wrist straight, elbow down, upper arm hugging into your body, and your hand is somewhere between like the midline of your body and your shoulder, kind of at your collarbone. Okay, so we're not crossed over, we're not outside, we're not up here like this. That can feel comfortable maybe to rest the kettlebell on your shoulder, but that's not proper form. Do not do that. Okay, so we have covered two-hand rack position, and we've covered single arm rack position. I'm going to try to go through my Kettlebell Foundations cheat sheet today, and those are the first two things on it. Now I want to cover a kettlebell squat. So our kettlebell in our goblet squat is going to be up here at our chest, kind of like where my kettlebell is on my shirt right now. So I'm going to take this 22-pound kettlebell, and we're going to bring it up to two-hand rack position or goblet position for this squat. So I'm going to pick it up, pop it up. We're going to cover a two-hand clean or a goblet clean. That'll be coming up very soon. But for now, the squat, we have our kettlebell at our chest, elbows down. That kettlebell is not resting on my body, but I'm not holding it tremendously far away. My feet are about hip distance apart. I'm going to inhale as I come down into my squat. My elbows are going to stay inside my knees. I'm going to come down to wherever's comfortable for me. I would love to see at least your thighs parallel to the floor. So here, elbows inside your knees. Exhale as you drive into the floor with your feet and stand up nice and tall. I'll demo a couple more. Inhale down. Exhale up. One more. And up. I'm going to place the kettlebell down the same way that I picked it up. Couple things that I see a lot of times with squats are elbows out. So people are squatting here. They're not squatting deep enough. They're just kind of hinging. So we want elbows down. We want to keep our chest up. And we want to try to go as low as possible to promote more mobility through our ankles, our knees, and our hips. So that's our kettlebell squat in the goblet position. Next, I want to go through the kettlebell deadlift. Kettlebell deadlift. So our squat is quad dominant, knee dominant. We have a lot of bending through our ankles. Remember here, our deadlift is a hinging exercise. So it's going to be more hips rather than knees. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. When we start our deadlift, we want our kettlebell in between our feet. So I'm setting up. If you look down, you should see the letter H with your feet. And then that kettlebell is in the middle. The handle is going horizontal. And the ball of the kettlebell is kind of right by the arches of your feet, or maybe even your ankles. You do not want the kettlebell out in front of you, you're right over the top of it. We're going to take our hands to our hips. We're going to push our hips back like we're trying to tap the wall behind us. My wall is very far away, but just pretend. Now we want to bend our knees enough to get down to the kettlebell handle. And we want to think about breaking that handle like a stick. What that's doing is it's packing our shoulders down and away from our ears. So right over the top of that kettlebell, break the handle like a stick. And now that we're all set up in a good position, we can stand up. Eyes up at the top. I mean, just looking forward. You don't have to look up. Just look forward. Inhale, go back to that same place that you started. Now my eyes are looking at the ground. Out in front of me, I have a neutral neck. Shoulders are back. Driving into the floor with my feet. Exhale. Kettlebell's right here in front of me. My arms are not locked out. My arms are relaxed. Standing up nice and tall, shoulders, hips, and heels. Inhale down. Exhale up. And let's place it down the same way that we picked it up. And that's our kettlebell deadlift. Okay, next exercise. We're going to do a suitcase deadlift. Suitcase deadlift. So this is a deadlift where we're picking up the kettlebell like it's an old school suitcase, and we're going to hang out with it. We could take a walk with it. We could just hold it. We could march. I like a good march. So now that same kettlebell, still 22 pounds. This is something that if you bought or you have access to lighter kettlebells and heavier kettlebells, you could definitely do heavier kettlebells on these exercises, like your deadlifts, your suitcase deadlifts. But because I'm lazy, I'm just going to use this light one right here for demoing. So the kettlebell is to the right of my right foot. My feet are pretty close, pretty narrow. I'm going to come down with my right hand. I'm going to push my hips back just like I did on that other deadlift. I'm going to keep my shoulders and hips square as I come down to my kettlebell. My other arm is out here as if I had a second kettlebell, and maybe someday I will. But for today, just this one, and we're just going to pick it up. Now here at the top, I'm standing up nice and tall, shoulders are back, abs are engaged, and I could hold it here. I could take this kettlebell for a walk, trying to maintain a nice upright position with my torso. The longer I'm holding on to this kettlebell in my right hand, the more my left oblique is going to be working to keep me balanced and upright. I love a good kettlebell march. As kind of a priming exercise or active recovery, a nice core exercise. Again, we're going to place this kettlebell back down to the floor the same way that we picked it up. There's really never an exercise where we're not going to put the kettlebell down the same way that we picked it up. Not that I can think of. Okay, so suitcase deadlift, we could do that on the right. We could do that on the left. We could do that with double kettlebells. But for today, we'll just leave it at that. Next exercise is a two-hand dead clean. So that's what I did with the kettlebell to bring it up to goblet position for that squat. Now we'll go through that in greater detail. So I'm going to start just like I did for the deadlift, where the kettlebell is in between my feet. I'm making that letter H. I'm going to get into more of a down position. It's called a vertical pulling position to bring that kettlebell up to my chest. So I'm going to come down to the kettlebell. I'm going to grab the kettlebell by the top of the handle. And now my butt's down pretty far here. So when I set up for the deadlift, I was probably more here. Now I'm getting my butt down and my chest up. So my arms are being pulled as straight as possible as I sink my butt down and my chest up, because I'm going to pop that kettlebell up off the floor right to my chest. So I want to be in that vertical pulling position so I can pull that kettlebell straight up. I'm going to use my legs, my hips, my back, my arms, everything. So here I am wedging myself down into the ground, and my eyes are looking up slightly. And I'm going to use all my power, pop that kettlebell up, and then place it right here at my chest to get ready for a squat or a lunge or whatever it is I'm doing. As I pop that kettlebell up, I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to look through that handle. And if I'm just holding the kettlebell here, I'm training my upper back. My abs are engaged. My legs are nice and tight. And I'm just holding here to train my core and my upper back. But if I'm going to do something out of it, I'm going to pull the kettlebell to my chest so I can get ready for, say, it's a squat or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 dead cleans with 2 hands on the kettlebell. Okay, so 2 hands, dead clean. This is my last demo. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to park that kettlebell. You might have noticed my feet came off the floor. I'm literally jumping with the kettlebell, jumping up with it, catching it, and settling back down. Not every kettlebell exercise we want to be leaving the ground. In fact, a lot of them, we really want our feet to be glued to the floor, using the ground for grip, stability, all of the things. I'm not usually training with shoes on. Typically, I'm barefoot, but right now, while I'm recording, it's the fall, it's cold outside, and the ground is cold. So I'm wearing some shoes right now, but typically I'm not. Okay, so that's the dead clean with 2 hands. Now I'm going to show you a dead clean with 1 hand. So single arm. So we're going to take the kettlebell from the ground into that single arm rack position. I'll demonstrate on the left. So we're going to get into that wedged position again. So the kettlebell is now inside my left foot, closer to my left foot than it is to my right. I'm going to bring my hips back and down. My left hand is on the kettlebell. It's straight. It's nice and straight as I wedge myself in, trying to keep my chest up nice and tall. My right arm is here. I'm going to do that same pull with my legs, my feet, all the things, and land in rack position on the left. Okay, so I'm here. My wrist is straight. My elbow is down. This arm is here, just creating tension. You could also be right here. And then I'm going to unwind, spin the kettlebell off of my wrist, back to the floor. Again. And I'm going to park it. Okay, I'm going to take off my sweatshirt right now because number 1, I'm getting warm. And number 2, I think it's really important to see the things that are happening and the things that aren't happening on this dead clean. So single arm cleans are one of those exercises that can create a lot of problems for people because if they're not doing it right, the kettlebell can like flip over and whack them on the wrist. It can be something that's just very uncomfortable for people. So I'm going to come a little bit closer and show you a couple more dead cleans. This kettlebell is not heavy for me, so I might grab a heavier one, but I want you to notice the kettlebell is not coming over my wrist, it's spinning around my wrist. And I'm trying to keep the kettlebell close to my body on the way up so that it has less of a chance of coming out and then in. That's what we want for our clean. Here. My elbow is pulling back into like a row. And then I'm spearing my hand up to get into that rack position. Okay. So nice and slow. It comes from the ground. I'm pulling my elbow back. The kettlebell is never coming upside down. It's coming from here and then here as my arm goes up. This is definitely one of those exercises that takes a lot of reps, a lot of practice. So be patient. You're probably not going to get it just perfectly on your first try. I sure didn't, but keep trying, keep going, it'll get better. Sometimes you need to go up in weight because the heavier the kettlebell is, the more weight there is on the ball of the kettlebell and the less opportunity it has to flip end over end. When it's heavy, it's not going to flip over and you'll be able to accomplish that clean without it whacking your wrist in the way that we want it to. Okay, so that was a single arm dead clean. Now we're going to go through the two hand swing, which is going to take us to about the halfway point of this Kettlebell Foundations sheet. Okay, so two hand clean. Love this exercise so much. See it done incorrectly so much, right? A lot of people think that they can just pick up a kettlebell and start swinging it, and then they wonder why their back hurts. And there's a lot of reasons why your back hurts in a swing, and it's because you're not using good form. So if you can do a good deadlift, if you can do a good body weight plank, which is not on this foundation sheet because it's not a kettlebell exercise, but it is something that I always cover in any of my kettlebell foundational workouts. We need to be doing a good plank if we want to be doing a good swing because our kettlebell swing has a plank in it. Instead of planking horizontally, we're planking vertically with the kettlebell. So I'm going to show you a kettlebell swing just in case this is the first time in your life you've ever seen a kettlebell swing, and then I will take you through it step by step. I'm going to make a triangle with my feet and the kettlebell. I'm going to kick this off and then I'll break it down. Okay, that's our kettlebell swing. That is a hard style kettlebell swing. There's a lot of different kettlebell swings. That's the one that I teach. It's taught in Russian kettlebell training, strong first training. That's the way that I perform a kettlebell swing. So that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, the kettlebell starts out in front of you. You're going to make a triangle with your feet. Some people like to step back again, make a triangle. I'm not doing that, but if you're too far away or too close, you can fix that almost immediately with your setup. So hands to your hips, push those hips back, just like we did for our deadlift. And now we're going to grab the handle and we're going to tip the handle back. This kettlebell is too far away from me and I can feel that because my shoulders and my lats are not engaged. So what you want to do is you want to pull your shoulders away from your ears. So maybe shrug them up to your ears and then pull them down away from your ears. And when you engage your lats and pull your shoulders down, you probably notice that kettlebell slid towards me. All right. Now we're going to hike the kettlebell into our hips. I say hips, but really like your crotch. Hike that kettlebell up into your crotch. Not a great word. No one uses it. And then we're going to stand up forcefully with the kettlebell. That's what makes it a ballistic exercise. We're going to find that plank position at the top. We're going to bring the kettlebell back to our hips. And then we're going to get into another swing. So we're going to do 5 swings. So it starts with that good setup. Triangle with your feet and the kettlebell. Hips back, grab the kettlebell handle, pack your shoulders, pack your lats, feet are glued to the floor, abs are engaged. Inhale breath as you hike up. Exhale as you stand. And we'll park it. There are 10,000 different ways that people manage to screw up a kettlebell swing. I'm not going to go into all of them because I want to keep this video tight, but few things to point out. Your setup matters, and I just went over your setup extensively. Your backswing matters. So keeping that kettlebell tight into your body in the backswing. So not here, okay? Having your knees bent and your hips back. So not here, as I fall in your backswing. And then the top of your swing, having that straight body and casting the kettlebell to about your face, somewhere between your chest and your face, and holding it here as long as you can. Your swing is powered by your legs, your glutes, your hip flexors, your quads, your back, your abs. It is not an upper body arm raise. Okay. So use a light kettlebell, get acquainted, but pretty quickly advance up to your heavier kettlebells. Because when you have a really light kettlebell, say like this one, I can just raise it up with my arms and not use my legs at all. When you have a kettlebell that's more appropriate, you cannot raise it with your arms. I guess I can a little bit, but really, when I swing, I'm using 35, 45, 55 pounds plus. I definitely can't front raise that. It's all about your legs. It's all about power, ballistics, all that good stuff. So that's a quick synopsis of a two-hand kettlebell swing. Single arm swing. Love a single arm swing. So nothing really changes with your legs in a single arm swing. What changes is that you're holding on with one hand. So before I give people a single arm swing to do, I obviously want to make sure that they can do a single arm deadlift. So that's just a deadlift, but with one hand. So I'm setting up kind of like I did for that single arm dead clean, where the kettlebell is going to be inside of my foot on the arm that I'm training with. So I'm setting up on my right side. I'm going to hold the kettlebell with my right hand. Push your hips back, grab that handle, and stand it up right in front of your leg. Very simple. Not a lot changes between the two-hand deadlift and the single arm deadlift. Couple things to point out. Anti-rotation with shoulders and hips. I'm not winding into it and unwinding. I'm keeping my shoulders and hips square down and up, just like the suitcase deadlift. So for a single arm swing, I'm going to set up with that triangle position. Now the kettlebell is slightly towards one side, the side that I'm going to be holding on with and training with. So it's not a perfect triangle. I don't remember geometry, but it's slightly shifted over to one side. I'm going to do that same setup, pushing my hips back, holding onto the kettlebell with one hand, tipping it back, making my shoulder and lat are packed. And then this free hand that doesn't have anything else to do is going to be working hard as well. I'll show you with an air kettlebell. So my free hand is my right hand. I'm getting it set up right here. My left hand is going to be on the kettlebell. As I hike the kettlebell up, my free hand is going to swing back. And then as I come up for the kettlebell swing, the top of the swing, this free hand is either going to be a guide for my kettlebell hand or it's going to be here. I recommend for beginners, they just keep this arm straight, swing it back in the back swing, and swing it up at the top of the swing. So it's here, 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 here. So let me show you, and you can give it a try. All right, that is our single arm swing. Single arm swing is extremely important if you want to do more advanced exercises like a snatch, for example. A lot of people want to learn a kettlebell snatch, but if your single arm swing is not good, um, then you really shouldn't be training the snatch just yet because the mechanics aren't there. Like we got to walk, we got to crawl before we can walk, and we got to walk before we can run. So that's our single arm swing. That's where I keep a lot of clients for a lot of time before we start working on the snatch because it's just something that needs to be dialed in, refined. I'm still working on my swing. I've been working on my swing for going on a decade. All right, dead snatch. Speaking of the snatch, so our dead snatch is where we're going to take the kettlebell from the ground into an overhead position. So our dead clean, we did the same thing. It's from the ground right into the rack position. For a snatch, we're going from the ground into an overhead position. I love a dead snatch. I love it so much. I love all these kettlebell exercises, but a dead snatch is just one of those where it's like you feel so powerful just ripping a kettlebell off the floor into an overhead position. Since we haven't even gone over an overhead position, let me start there because if you can't comfortably hold a kettlebell overhead, then I don't want you like going with all your power and force and might from the ground into an overhead position. That would just be silly. So take your light kettlebell from the rack position into an overhead position. Notice my wrist is facing forward. My arm is straight. My arm is by my ear. So from the side, I'm not out here. I'm not out here. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I think one of the main things is just keeping that wrist. So we're not here, the inside of our wrist is forward. Again, my wrist is straight. So I'm not here. I'm not here. My arm is straight. Okay, so that is our overhead position. You can pull it back to the rack and place it down. I would try that on both sides just to make sure that your mobility and your ability to just be in an overhead position is okay on both sides. A lot of times we have one side that's stronger than the other, weaker than the other, tighter than the other, all the things. Okay, so assuming your overhead position is a-okay, let's do a dead snatch. So your kettlebell is going to be inside your right foot. Boom. A little bit more space between your left side, but your feet are still, hip distance apart and pointed forward. I'm going to get into that vertical pulling position, right? So butt down, chest up, wedging my body down into the floor. And I'm going to jump and punch. The kettlebell is going to stay close to my body as I jump it up. It's going to flip over and I'm just going to punch straight up. All right. So let me do 3. All right, that's our dead snatch. You got to be powerful with it. You have to jump with the kettlebell and you have to be very intentional about finishing strong all the way through. Give it like 110%. If you kind of baby it, if you don't go for it all the way, you're gonna be in a bad way, catching that kettlebell low and muscling it all the way through. I think a dead snatch is a really great it's a great exercise just to train all the time for power, but I think it's a great introduction to the kettlebell snatch where you hike from the hip and punch all the way through because a lot of people think a hike pass snatch is a single arm swing that finishes with your arm by your ear, and it's definitely not that. In my dead snatch, hopefully you could see from the side that the kettlebell was staying close to my body. So I'm not projecting it out, I'm projecting it up. So I'm literally pulling it towards my body and punching up almost at the same time. But it starts with the feet jumping. Okay, so it starts with the feet, pull, punch, but it's all happening at the same time. Okay, so I want to talk about the snatch from the hike pass position. So the hike pass is basically what we did for the swing. We could also do a hike pass clean, which I'm not sure if it's on this sheet. Is it on this sheet? No. But I'm going to do that also. So hike pass clean, very not intuitive, unintuitive, that's a word. It starts like a swing, right? So we're out here, single arm, making sure that shoulder is packed. So with a clean, remember, we're taking the kettlebell into the rack position, into that intermediate place up by our chest, shoulder. So we're going to hike to our hip. We're going to row back and then end up in the rack position. So that's a hike pass clean. Come back to the floor the same way. Hip, ground. You can also clean from the hip. The difference between a dead clean and a hike pass clean is the involvement of bringing the kettlebell to your hip and using that bump from your hip as opposed to straight off the ground into the rack position. It's the same thing for a snatch. So a dead snatch, we start from the floor and we just rip it right up to the top. With a hike pass snatch, you're going to get the kettlebell into your hip and then use that bump from your hips to drive the kettlebell overhead. The reason why the hike pass clean and the hike pass snatch are not intuitive is because a lot of times, because the kettlebell is coming from out in front of us, we then want to cast it back out in front of us before we pull it in, or we want to cast it out before we bring it up. And that's not the way. We want to come from our hip, keep it close to our body into that clean, or close to our body to come into the snatch. So these are two exercises, the hike pass clean and the hike pass snatch, that also take a lot of time to get the right way. I spent a lot of time doing them wrong myself. And so it's not something that you need to feel bad about if you're not getting it perfectly today. This definitely is like reps, time, practice, attention to detail, hearing that right cue that kind of resonates with you. So let me show you the hike pass snatch and then we'll break it down. So here it is. I'll do 3. So, how I recommend getting started with the hike pass snatch is going from the top down. So, we want to clean our kettlebell up, however you clean it up. We want to get it into that overhead position. And we want to practice the drop. So, taming the arc, practicing that drop. We want to keep the kettlebell close to our body as we flip it over, bring it in to catch it at our hip and place it down. So, it looks like this. Again, keep it close to your body. The opposite of what I'm talking about is this. See how my arm was straight the whole time? So we want what we want to be hitting is what's called a gooseneck position. So when we're dumping the kettlebell down, we're here. Okay. So our elbow is down and our kettlebell is popping off of our arm. So we're here to your hip and then the floor. What I don't want is the kettlebell to be here. Your elbow is up here and it's really harsh on your shoulder on the way down. So that's what we want here, gooseneck position to your hip and then back to the floor. So once you have practiced getting the kettlebell off of your body in the snatch, then we can start practicing getting it up. So I love this drill that I learned from my latest Strong First certification, where we do like a T-Rex arm and we have our other arm free and we kind of do like a little miniature, not a snatch, but we're kind of working our way up, keeping this elbow bent, working our way up, and then finishing by punching all the way through. So it would look something like this. 1, 2, 3, and then snatch all the way through. So the purpose of that drill is to practice getting up to the top of the snatch without a straight arm. So we're bending our arm, we're kind of catching that kettlebell with our other hand so it's not at risk of hitting us in the face. Once you can get a little bit of confidence, see this position here, then we can punch all the way through. What usually happens when people first start doing a snatch is they keep a straight arm and they do this, and then the kettlebell whacks them in the wrist. When done properly, you should be catching the kettlebell with your arm on the way up. So it's flipping over your hand, you're catching it here, and then punching all the way through. You don't even feel the weight of the kettlebell smashing onto your forearm when done properly. So try that drill a few times and then try to put it together right into a snatch. So hike, snatch, and that's it. That is one of the most complex of the foundational kettlebell exercises. So that's definitely not something I usually lead with. It's like, does this person have a strong deadlift? Do they have a strong plank? Do they have a strong swing? Do they have a strong single arm swing? Can they get the dead snatch down? Do they have a strong overhead press? When all those things are in place, then you can attack a snatch. But before that, we got to work on all those other foundational skills. So it's a lot for a beginner, but if you, um, you know, have been around the weight room, have a little bit of experience, it's not so complicated for everyone, but don't feel bad if it feels out of reach right now. Um, in time, it won't feel that way. Okay, a couple more exercises. Overhead press, halo, and Turkish get up. We're saving the most complicated for the last. Yay. Okay, overhead press, super simple. We've already even addressed it, but I want to just go through because there is a technique for the way that you get into the press and then out of it. So we can start with a dead clean. So just bringing that kettlebell up to your chest. Feet are going to be glued to the floor. The involvement of your feet and the rest of your body is super important in your overhead press. So we want to be generating energy down with our feet, gripping the floor with our toes, staying connected to the ground. Glutes are engaged, quads are engaged, abs are engaged, tension through this other arm. I'm in that strong rack position. I don't have to tell you the points of the rack position. You should know. As we come into our press, we're going to slightly come out, turn our hand, and when we finish the press, our arm is straight, our arm is by our ear, the inside of our wrist is pointed forward. As you come back down, retrace your steps right back to the rack position. This free hand can be here, it can be here, it can be here, whatever feels good to you. Just don't be like limp with it and doing nothing. We want to use it for tension. That way we can press even better and even higher weight in the future. This is a slow grinding exercise, the opposite of our ballistic exercises like our cleans, our swings, and our snatches. So mostly what I wanted to show you about the overhead press is it's not a neutral position all the way up and down with our wrist. We are turning our wrist on the way up and then on the way back down. Okay, halo. A halo I like to use mostly for like a priming exercise or a prep exercise to get our shoulders warmed up and train our core. There's a lot of different halo variations we can do, but I'm just going to show a basic halo today. When we grab the kettlebell, we want to grab it upside down. See how, or my hands are upside down. My thumbs are down because I'm going to turn this kettlebell upside down to get into that halo position. I'm using a light kettlebell right now, which I would recommend. Holding it by the horns, bottoms up. I'm gonna go to the right first. So I'm gonna go to my right ear. And so now the kettlebell sideways. I'm gonna go behind my head. So now the kettlebell is down here by the base of my neck. And from the front, my elbows are pulling towards each other. So this is not the point of a halo. It's here. You're gonna get more stretch out of it, particularly in your triceps. And then we're gonna come to our left ear, and then we're going to come back to our chest. It doesn't have to be that segmented out. We can make it a little bit more fluid, just as long as we're hitting all those points. A halo is not around the top of your head like this. We're trying to go deep, all the way around, lubricate those shoulders. It's also a nice core exercise because we're having to stabilize through our core as this weight travels 360 degrees around our body. So that's the kettlebell halo. You can do them to the right. You can do them to the left. You can do them in a number of different positions, from a kneeling position to a single leg position, stagger stance, all kinds of different stuff. But that's the most basic version of a halo, which I like to use for warm up. Okay, Turkish get up. Yeah. All right, so for a Turkish get up, this is a multi-step exercise which takes us from the ground into an overhead position with a kettlebell and then all the way back down. I'm finally taking off my shoes because we can use a shoe to help us with our technique. I'm going to show you a Turkish get up. I'll show you with the kettlebell and then I'll take you through it as I would step by step if you were learning one. So don't try to do this right now. Just watch and then I'll take you through it. A Turkish get up from start to finish. Okay. So maybe why the heck would we do a Turkish get up would be a great thing to address. So I like to use the Turkish get up as another priming exercise. It's a good shoulder stabilizer. If we do, especially if we do like two or three in a row, our shoulder is going to be really lit up and really having to work hard to stay in that vertical position. It's great for our core. It warms up our legs. It helps us connect to our body. And there's an awesome strength transfer once we get good at Turkish get ups and we can go up in weight. There's a lot of benefits to being able to go heavy with Turkish get ups and being able to go heavier with our other kettlebell lifts, like an overhead press or a snatch or overhead lunge or anything like that. So it's also just functionally an amazing exercise for being able to get up and down off the ground all the time. It sounds funny when you're young, like who can't get up off the ground. But as we get older, you'll start to notice your parents, your grandparents, maybe even yourself. When you get down on the ground, it's like, oh, Lord, it's a lot of effort to get back up. So no matter what, if you can master a Turkish get up, you're going to be able to get up and down off the ground in a much easier way and have a much easier time with it than someone who's not training get ups. Okay, so I don't teach people to get up with weight. You could hold a shoe in your hand, you could hold a yoga block, or just nothing. Okay, so the best thing to do is to hold something that's weightless. I'm gonna literally hold this shoe in my hand. And there's a right side and a left side. So on the right side, we're gonna start with our arm straight and our eventually our weight will be in our right hand. Our right knee is bent and it's open. My hip is open. So I'm not just here, I have this open. And then my left arm and leg are also open. So you want to think about a 45-degree angle with your left arm and leg. We're going to punch and roll up to our left elbow. So we're going to drive into the floor with that left elbow. We're going to push from our right foot and we're going to roll to the left as if we were rolling over in bed. Notice it's not a sit up, right? I'm rolling to the left. In this position, I'm not collapsing into the floor. I'm pushing the floor away with my left elbow. I'm reaching up nice and strong with my right arm, but I still want to be connected into my body. So I'm not stretching up and waving around. Nice and vertical with this right arm. Second step, super easy. Just come up to the palm of your hand. This is called the tall sit position. My left leg is active, my quad is engaged, my foot is flexed. Now I'm going to do a bridge. So bridging those hips up, trying to create as much space as possible between you and the floor. For a lot of beginners, this is where we stop and then we retrace our steps back down. But for the purpose of this video, I want to take you all the way through. So punch and roll, full sit, hips up. Now, this is the trickiest part for a lot of people. We're going to bring our left knee underneath our left hip. So I'll show you that again, kind of sweeping underneath my body. And I'm pulling this left leg back. So it's not here, it's back underneath my hip. I'm in a T spine position here. So I'm stacked up with my shoulders. I'm stacked up with my hips. Then I'm gonna push my hips to the right and come into a half kneeling position. I'm gonna square my body off so that I can stand up, not here, but nice and aligned, like I'm coming up from a lunge. And then this is the halfway point. Now I'm gonna retrace my steps back down. Left leg comes back to the floor. I'm gonna pivot on my knee. I'm gonna slide down my leg. My eyes are on my shoe. Slide down my leg, reach for the floor, out to the side of my leg, not behind me. Right out to the side, finding again that T-spine position. Kick back through, right to my sits bones or my butt. Roll to your elbow, roll to your back. And then park your kettlebell or your shoe. Left side for the purpose of going through it. And actually, I'll do it with a kettlebell this time because this is also important. So if you make it to the point where you're starting to do Turkish get ups with a kettlebell, you're starting in the fetal position, left hand underneath the handle, right hand on top, pull that kettlebell to your chest, use both hands to push it up overhead. Now my wrist is still straight, my elbow straight. Now my left knee is bent, right arm and leg are straight because I'm doing it on the left side. Punch and roll to your right elbow. Pulse it. Hip bridge, right knee underneath you, half kneeling position, standing up. Back to the floor, pivot, slide down your leg, kick through to your sits bones, elbow, and back. Park the kettlebell, same way that you started. Okay, that's our Turkish get up. I know that's a lot. Really quickly, I want to go through 3 quickie workouts you could do. This is also from my PDF. 3 exercises for 3 little mini workouts, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So the beginner workout is a suitcase deadlift with 10 marches on each side with 10 halos and then 5 two-hand cleans. So I'm not going to go through all of the reps, but I'll just show you in case you want to try out this beginner quickie workout. It starts with that suitcase deadlift. So shoulders and hips stay square, come down to that bell, pick it up, 10 marches, take it slow. You want to really stabilize on one foot before transferring to the other. Once you get your 10 marches, park the kettlebell, and then you can switch sides. For our halo, what does it say? 10 halos each direction. Okay, so go light with your kettlebell because that's a lot of reps. We're going to pick it up. We're holding that kettlebell upside down. Feet are glued to the floor. We're going to go 10 to the right, and we'll go 10 to the left. Pretend like I did 10 on each side. And now we're going to do 5 two-hand dead cleans. So getting into that vertical pulling position, butt down, chest up, arms are straight, wedging ourselves into the floor, jump and pull. Hold it here, back to the floor. 5 of those. And to make this a little quickie workout, 2 to 3 sets of each movement. Make sure you're taking about 30 seconds or so in between the exercises. For an intermediate kettlebell workout, we're going to do 10 squats, 8 overhead presses on each side, and 10 two-hand swings. So 10 squats. So it's going to start with that dead clean that we just did. And we're going to get 10 squats. So pull that kettlebell down to your chest. Inhale down. Exhale up. Working on your range of motion, keeping your feet glued to the floor, connecting your breath. Okay, 8 overhead presses. So starting on one side, you'll do a dead clean, and then 8 overhead presses. Pretend like I did 8. Shake it off. 8 on the other side. And then 10, two hand swings. So we're going to set up with our kettlebell out in front of us, making that triangle, two hands on the bell, tip it back, pack the lats. All the way to 10. Maybe 3 to 4 sets of those 3 exercises, 30 seconds in between. Make sure you're rested. Use a weight that you're comfortable with. But if you want to challenge yourself, maybe the second time you do this workout, third time, go up and weight if you can on the exercises that you can. All right, advanced. Turkish get up, single arm swing. So 3 Turkish get ups, 5 single arm swings, and 5 dead snatches. So all of these exercises that require a little bit more technique, a little bit more time and attention to learn them properly. So I'm going to do 1 Turkish get up, but we would want to do 3 for this workout. So 3 in a row. I do not recommend socks that are slippery like I'm using right now because it is scaring the poop out of me. All right, if I was going to do another rep, I would not park the kettlebell. I would stay here and start on my next rep. So 3 on each side. Then I believe it was 5 single arm swings. Is that right? 5 and then 5 dead snatches. Okay, so for my single arm swing, packing that shoulder, packing that lat. Free hand is ready to rip it. I would park it, shake it out, and then switch sides. And last but not least, the dead snatch. I'll demo a couple of those, and then we'll call it a day. We would do 5 on each side of those. For our advanced workout, 3 to 5 sets of all of the above, making sure you're taking time to rest so that you're coming at each exercise from a place of strength instead of exhaustion. Okay, yay, we got through all of that in about an hour. I hope this was useful for you guys. I would love it if you share this video, send it to other people that are interested in kettlebell training or want to learn how to do things properly for once. Share me with other people. Again, my name is Rachel Eslick. My Instagram handle is at ReachFitRachel. My website is reachfit.net. And I would love to learn more about you. So if you guys have questions, comments, please reach out to me. You could do that on the gram or on my website. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much if you made it this far. You're a real one. All right, take care. Adios.